His younger sister sold everything, her house, her things, to chase a dream of traveling the world with no backup plan. And now, she's knocking on her brother's door, asking for a place to stay. Are you curious whether he'll choose to protect his personal space or reach out to save his family? Stay with us for this dramatic story. Jack, 35, just hit a milestone that few people even dare to dream about. He paid off a 10-year-old debt on a tiny 600-square-foot apartment in the heart of Seattle. In a world where skyrocketing home prices and suffocating interest rates crush dreams on the daily, the fact that someone like Jack, a cybersecurity specialist, managed to completely pay off his own place is nearly unheard of. He didn't win the lottery. He didn't inherit anything. He got there by skipping every coffee run, working late nights, and saving every extra dollar over weekends to pour into that worn-out little apartment. The 600-square-foot apartment wasn't spacious, no breezy balcony, but to Jack, it was a trophy, hard-earned after a decade of hustling. Every plane ticket or short getaway had to be budgeted down to the last dollar. Every sofa he bought came after endless debate. Is this too expensive? Do I really need this? Or is it just extra? Everything in the apartment, from the tiny welcome mat at the door to the simple wooden dining set, was handpicked by Jack, carefully ordered to build a space that felt just enough for a single guy. The day Jack made his final debt payment was also the day he hit the street at 5:30 a.m., holding a homemade sandwich and a bottle of water, ready for his usual 5K run along Lake Union. The trail was quiet, just the sound of jet engines from the port, the soft ripple of waves against the shore, and his steady breathing. Jack believed that health had to be the foundation, because in cybersecurity, you've got to keep your eyes sharp all day, blocking hackers and guarding against dangerous digital attacks. After every run, Jack spent about 20 minutes meditating in a small corner by the window, where the sunrise filtered softly through wooden blinds. A short yoga flow followed, warrior pose, bridge, forward fold, stretching his muscles and helping reset his mind before diving into 8 hours of monitoring security vulnerabilities. The space was empty of clutter, not a single unnecessary item in sight. It gave Jack a sense of control over everything. He didn't need bright yellow walls. He didn't need a vintage octagonal mirror. Minimalism helped his mind stay quiet, free from the invisible chaos of modern life. His friends often teased him for being cold, or like a robot, since it was rare to catch him hanging out at cafes or partying until dawn. Instead, every Saturday was Jack's version of going all out, scrubbing the floors, reorganizing his bookshelf, and running final checks on his self-installed security camera system. It was as if this apartment wasn't just his home, but a personal lab, a space where every corner had to run flawlessly, exactly the way he designed his life to. That peaceful life wasn't perfect. Jack remembered the sleepless nights, lying awake, thinking about how his paycheck barely covered the loan payments, thinking about coworkers getting promoted while he poured everything he had into each long night. But he always told himself, every drop of sweat was a brick laid toward freedom. And now, with the word debt wiped clean from his apartment keys, he could finally take a deep breath and quietly thank himself for never giving up. These days, Jack woke up without that old weight of repayment anxiety. He could relax his body, sit calmly in the middle of his living room with a cup of herbal tea, pull the curtains wide open, and let the soft morning light spill in. He'd scroll through tech news, draft a few emails, then head down to the garage to start up his electric bike for the commute to work. On the way, he could even afford 5 quiet minutes to watch the white herons perched on the lake's lampposts, something he used to speed past, crushed by deadlines he could never quite outrun. Just the thought of it, a place that's fully his, no rising interest rates to worry about, no bank payment reminders ringing in his ears, made Jack chuckle. He knew that feeling well. When you stare at a spotless white wall and think, I did it. It was a fleeting moment, but powerful enough to remind him why he would protect his peaceful space at all costs. To Jack, peace wasn't about hiding from the world. It was about building a personal fortress, a place to recharge before heading back into battle with the complex world of cyber attacks. He cherished that 600-square-foot apartment because it was the reward for sleepless nights, for lines of code and firewalls, More than anything, it was proof that he was the one steering his own life, not some lucky break or divine hand. He didn't know how or when that peace might be tested. But Jack believed one thing. No matter what storms came, he would always have a place to return to. A small screen in front of him, a minimalist space behind him, and a quiet smile that said, "This is mine." Jack barely had time to fully enjoy a moment of peace in his 600-square-foot apartment before realizing that his only sister, Mia, was about to trigger an undercurrent strong enough to wreck every calm plan he'd built. Mia, 32, was a senior attorney at one of the top law firms in Los Angeles. Ever since graduation, she had chased the world of billable hours without pause, from international contracts to the most complex court trials. Her glass-walled office, overlooking the bustling avenue below, had become her own kind of lab, a place where Mia dissected every piece of evidence, every clause, with the razor focus of a seasoned lawyer. But beneath the fitted suits and high heels, Mia carried a hollow feeling she couldn't quite explain. For the past 2 years, the non-stop workload had drained every ounce of energy from her. There were nights when Mia was still typing away close to midnight, racing to meet the deadline for a legal brief. She missed her parents' birthdays, couldn't make it to her best friend's wedding, and once stayed up all night in a hotel room prepping for a trial that lasted into the next morning. One quiet Sunday afternoon, standing in an empty courtroom and staring out at the bleak hallway, Mia suddenly realized she had become a stranger to her original dreams: justice, freedom, and the feeling of living true to herself. The thought of breaking free from the cycle of work, work, work started to grow louder in her mind. She quietly bought a book titled 1,000 Days Around the World, downloaded podcasts about the nomadic lifestyle, and for the first time ever, signed up for an outdoor meditation retreat in Joshua Tree. Waking up with the desert sunrise, listening to the wind rustle through the cactus trees, she asked herself, "How long have I been lost from who I really am?" Then came Marco, her college boyfriend, now a creative director at an ad agency. He too was burned out by the relentless agency pace and flashy business cards that meant nothing. One late evening, after a grueling pitch meeting, Marco texted Mia, "What if we just disappeared for a while?" They laughed, unsure if it was a joke or a dare, but deep down, the resolve was real. Within just 2 weeks of mulling it over, Mia and Marco made a sudden decision to list their 2-bedroom condo by the beach in Venice, a place packed with shared memories. Client meetings, long-term contracts, all of it got pushed aside. They called a realtor on Friday afternoon. By Monday, the listing was up, priced higher than they'd even hoped. The sale happened shockingly fast. The market was on fire, with 3 competing buyers, and in the end, they closed at 12% above the original asking price. On signing day, Mia wore a simple white blouse, standing quietly as she signed the papers and handed over the keys, like she was giving away a version of herself to an unknown freedom ahead. Marco stayed out of the camera flashes, his eyes filled with both nerves and excitement. Word spread quickly in legal circles. Mia, the golden girl of the courtroom, had left the city behind and vanished from the legal scene. Friends and colleagues were stunned. Everyone assumed she'd invest in more property, maybe launch her own firm. No one expected her to wipe the books clean, lock her company email, and say goodbye. Less than 48 hours after closing the sale, Mia sent an email to the entire firm. "Dear colleagues, I am officially resigning as of date. I need time to catch my breath and explore a world beyond invisible paperwork." The email server shut down. Her profile photo was replaced with an image of a backpack and a mountain range bathed in sunset. And just 1 week later, Mia shouldered her backpack, packed up Luna, their husky, neatly, and set off with Marco on a journey with no destination. Right before boarding the plane, she sent Jack a short message, "We'll talk later. Right now, I need to be free." Jack stared at his phone screen, knowing full well that his 600-square-foot piece was about to face a wave he never saw coming. 1 week after Mia's farewell text, Jack's phone lit up with the first photo. Mia standing in the middle of the Uyuni salt flats in Bolivia. A heavy backpack strapped to her shoulders, Luna looking dazed beside her. No map, no hotel reservations. Just a vibe. Tonight they'd be here. Tomorrow, they might be halfway across Asia. Jack's 600-square-foot apartment suddenly felt quieter than ever, as if it were bracing for the crash of a wave rolling in from his sister's planless journey. Mia and her boyfriend Marco dove into South America with just one backpack, a few compact outfits, a camera, some US dollars, and Luna, their blue-eyed husky. They joked that local street food would be paid for with charm, and they just kept moving. From the beaches of Peru to the Andean highlands, they pitched tents by lakes, sifted through rocks for minerals, and met local villagers along the way. But all of it was condensed into a stream of Instagram stories. Mia flashing a dazzling smile, Marco holding up a rolled map like a trophy, Luna curled beside a campfire, all drenched in rose-colored light. Jack watched it all with a tight chest and a creeping thought. Are they really living that life? Or is this just one beautifully filtered performance? In less than 2 weeks, the couple had already crossed into Asia. Their next stop, Bali, where Mia showed off a villa overlooking terraced rice fields, an infinity pool with gentle ripples, and wide wooden windows thrown open to the sun. "You know what? This is what life is supposed to be," read Mia's caption, under a photo of her stretched out on a lounge chair. Not long after, they dropped a clip from a Tokyo rooftop, the city lights sparkling, cold Sapporo beers in hand, and a carefully plated sushi dish. The comments poured in. "You're so brave. Can I come with you?" Jack read them all with a heavy heart. Jealous? Sure. Worried? Even more. Because behind every polished photo was a hidden layer. Sky-high living costs, packed schedules, and visas that needed constant renewing. By the 3rd week, Mia's Instagram went silent. The real-time stories of the Bali villa and Tokyo rooftop suddenly stopped. Jack texted to check in, no response. He called Marco, line busy. He emailed her old work address, auto-reply, permanently deactivated. In his minimalist home, Jack patted the pocket of Mia's old jacket, still hanging where she left it, and wondered, what happened? Slowly, the dream of a limitless freedom began to crack. One afternoon, Jack opened his laptop and saw a message from Mia, marked unread. "Jack, I need help." He clicked it. Only a few rushed words flashed on screen, then disappeared. The screen froze for a moment, then showed an older message. "Get the wine ready. I'll be home soon to tell you everything." He deleted all the messages, except the one that said, "Help." Exactly 2 months later, at 3 a.m. Seattle time, Jack's phone rang. Unknown number. On the other end, Mia's voice, shaky, barely holding together. "Jack, we got scammed. All the cash we gave the guide in Nepal is gone. They locked us out of the guest house. My phone can't reach Marco." Her voice cracked, like a sudden illness hitting in the dead of night. On the screen, one word blinked, sweating through the signal. "I'm scared." Jack jolted upright, heart pounding. "Where are you? What about Marco? How's Luna?" But the connection was breaking up. Mia managed only a few gasping lines. She was in Kathmandu. Marco had gone out looking for Wi-Fi. Luna was hungry and cold. From the other side, a faint sound filtered through, a dog howling in the distance. Jack was gasping for breath, the alarm clock long forgotten. He grabbed his wallet, sprinted to the garage, jumped on his electric bike, didn't even think to grab a helmet, and tore through the empty streets. His mind spun with a single looping question. How careless could my sister have been? What happened to the condo money? What about the backup accounts? Seattle's night was just fading. The sun hadn't yet risen when Jack stood in front of a tiny roadside guest house on the outskirts. The address Mia had hastily sent in a text. The door was locked. Mud-caked footprints stained the doormat. Jack knocked over and over, fists tight with dread, every thought in his head unraveling into one. Had he spoiled her dreams too much? Trusted too blindly in her picture-perfect posts? And in that moment, Jack finally saw it for what it was. His sister's no-plan journey, the one so carefully curated on Instagram, had become a real-life disaster. The luxury villas were gone. The glowing rooftops, gone. All that remained were lost footsteps in the middle of a Nepalese night and a broken plea from the only person who ever called him Big Brother. A chill ran down his spine, but Jack knew. He couldn't hesitate. His phone screen lit up with a number calling back. "Mia? Marco? Are you still there?" In his ears, Mia's voice echoed, "Jack, help me." And right then, Jack understood. The silence of the last 3 weeks and the past 2 months had only been the opening act. Ahead was a long war between brother and sister. and his once peaceful 600-square-foot sanctuary was about to become the front line for the chaos she was bringing home. The next morning, after a sleepless night haunted by that late-night call, Jack still hadn't exhaled when his phone rang again. On the screen, Mia, this time with an exclamation mark. He forced himself upright, tugged down his wrinkled t-shirt, and ran a hand through the mess of hair flattened against his pillow. His 600-square-foot apartment, already tight, now pulsed with a single spinning thought. Is Mia really in danger? Or is this just her next act in the never-ending drama? But the moment Jack read the first message, he knew there was no turning back. Jack, can we crash with you for a little while? The storm here's really bad. Marco and Luna are soaked and freezing. I know you're busy, but we've got nowhere else to go. Just a few words, and Mia had painted a picture soaked in rain and shivering in Seattle's storm season. Jack clenched his jaw. The image of his sister curled up under a flimsy tarp, clutching Luna, hit him square in the chest. He knew that no way out feeling all too well. He'd lived it during those years of bouncing between rental rooms. But his apartment wasn't just his. There were two other residents who couldn't be overlooked. Sam, his roommate for the past 2 years, and Mr. Whiskers, the lazy, chubby cat who ruled the place like it was his personal kingdom. Jack paused, then replied with honesty, trying to keep his tone gentle. Mia, I get it. The rain here is brutal, but I've got Sam and Mr. Whiskers here. It's a small space, and I don't want to throw the whole place off balance. I can send you a few $100 to get an Airbnb nearby. I'll help you find something more stable long-term, and if you need it, I can transfer the money right away. After hitting send, Jack stared quietly at the blank wall in front of him. He told himself this was the best solution: offer financial support without upsetting the balance of his living space. Besides, he had promised to help his sister in any way he could, but that didn't mean letting family become a burden. Half the day slipped by. Still no reply from Mia. Jack kept busy with work, trying to focus on lines of code checking for security vulnerabilities. But in the back of his mind, the image of Mia, soaked, panicked, kept slipping through. He glanced out the window. Rain pounded the city, and the wind bent the trees as if trying to swallow the skyline whole. Around 9 a.m., just as Jack was about to step into the shower, a knock shattered the silence like a crack of thunder. He chuckled dryly. Who'd be dumb enough to knock in the middle of this storm? Still in his sleep shorts, he rushed over and cracked the door open, only to feel the breath catch in his chest at the sight in the hallway. Mia stood there, drenched, her dark dress clinging to her legs streaked with mud up to her ankles. Beside her was Marco, his jacket torn at the shoulder, soaked through, eyes cast down at his mud-caked shoes, and Luna, the once snowy husky, now covered in muck from snout to paws, looking up with wide, confused eyes as if asking, "Big brother, where am I?" No warning, no follow-up text, just the three of them, silently standing in the rain, water dripping relentlessly onto the tile floor. Jack's mind reeled. What are you doing here?" Instead of answering, Mia closed her eyes, bit her lip, and broke down in tears. I have nowhere else to go, Jack. Please, just let us stay one night. Just one. I swear we'll be gone tomorrow." Mia's eyes, mud-streaked, rain-soaked, locked Jack in place like a trap he couldn't escape. What would Sam say? Would Mr. Whiskers vanish under the bed for a week? But above all that, Jack was still her brother. And no matter how much chaos she brought with her, he couldn't just close the door on his sister in a moment like this. His heart pounded. His mouth was dry. Jack took a deep breath and steadied his voice. "Listen to me. Just one night, okay? Just one. Tomorrow morning, I'll help you find somewhere else. I'll book you an Airbnb tonight, or if it's too late to get a short-term spot, I'll front the deposit and we'll figure it out in the morning." Mia nodded, Marco let out a quiet sigh of relief, and Luna lunged forward to nuzzle Jack's leg, like greeting a long-lost savior. When the door clicked shut behind them, Jack stood motionless in the damp hallway, heart racing, pressure building behind his temples. He knew the line between family loyalty and personal freedom had just been thrown into a storm. No one chooses this kind of moment. But right now, the downpour outside wasn't just washing away the city's edges. It was pushing the limits of his own heart. And just like that, the first chapter of Just Crashing for a Night began, with Jack cast in the role of the burdened older brother, a role both unexpected and impossible to dodge. After a tense first night, Jack held on to the hope that this situation would remain a temporary inconvenience. But the next morning, Mia texted, "I need to stay a week. Luna's freezing." Jack exhaled sharply, then typed back, "1 week. That's it. I'll figure out a place for Luna to sleep." Mia and Marco quickly started stretching their stay with a string of polite but persistent requests. "Jack, can Luna sleep in Sam's room tonight? We promise we'll clean everything up after," they asked sweetly. Jack reluctantly nodded. He figured letting a husky freeze in the hallway felt worse than squeezing her into a small bedroom for a few nights. What he didn't see coming was how that one decision would become the spark. Sam, usually calm, even-tempered, and fiercely protective of Mr. Whiskers, completely lost it the next morning when he found Luna had taken over the top bunk, her matted fur tangled across his blankets and pillows. Sam burst out of the bathroom, cheeks flushed red. "Jack, what kind of circus are you running here? That dog dragged mud onto my bed. Mr. Whiskers is traumatized. He's sick." Sure enough, the usually tough little cat had thrown up and curled into a miserable ball in the corner, the entire attic now heavy with the smell of wet fur and sour air. Jack was speechless, jaw tight with frustration. In a last-ditch effort to calm the storm, he offered to send Sam on a weekend getaway. But deep down he knew, the balance in his apartment, once calm, clean, predictable, had just been broken. And not just at the surface. It was unraveling from the inside out. That evening, Elena, Jack's girlfriend, stopped by to drop off some laundry. She took the elevator up, expecting a quiet moment to tuck the bag into the closet. But as she reached the apartment, the living room door creaked open, spilling out warm yellow light. Curious, Elena gently pushed the door wider, only to see Mia and Alex, an old friend of Jack's, sitting far too close on the couch. Mia's eyes sparkled as she scrolled through her phone, laughing softly while reading out loud one of Alex's messages. "I still remember that day you wore the blue blazer." Elena froze. Mia jerked back, quickly tucking her phone away, eyes wide. It's nothing," she blurted. Alex scrambled to his feet, mumbling a clumsy hello, unable to meet Elena's eyes. Elena didn't wait for some half-baked explanation. She turned on her heel and walked out, heart pounding, a storm rising in her chest. From down the hallway, Jack caught the look in Elena's eyes, cold, sharp, unreadable. And in that instant, he knew things were spiraling, fast, and this time, it was beyond his control. Before the dust could even settle, Mia seized her next opportunity, a pop-up dinner fundraiser, right there in Jack's living room. The official reason? To raise money for the Nepal Scam Recovery Fund. But in reality, it turned into a full-blown party. Strangers poured in, clutching bottles of wine, pastries, mismatched Tupperware, and actual porcelain dishware like they were catering a wedding. The once crisp white sofa cover was now stained with grease. The floral rug was littered with breadcrumbs. Shattered wine glasses had left streaks of red splashed up the wall. Marco stood awkwardly beside Mia, wearing a stiff smile and wide, stunned eyes as he tried to greet the growing sea of unfamiliar faces. Jack stumbled through the chaos, trying to rescue toppling bottles and intercept tipsy hands from knocking over more of his home. The disaster peaked when one guest slipped, sending an entire bowl of salad flying straight into Sam's leg. Mr. Whiskers barely escaped, leaping down from a shelf just in time to avoid getting caught in the whirlpool of confusion. And in the middle of it all, Jack stood frozen, his home turned upside down, his patience dangling by a thread. While the living room morphed into party headquarters, Jack was drowning in something far worse, a critical deadline. That day, he was supposed to submit a cybersecurity vulnerability report to a major client. But the chaos wouldn't stop. Mia's frantic calls, raised voices, the clink and crash of wine glasses. Jack tried to anchor himself at his desk, fingers trembling as he typed out the report email. He hit send just as another notification popped up on his screen. "Jack, the report is overdue. I need an explanation. If not, we're losing the contract." From his boss. Right after that came a flood of client complaints. "We asked for this data 2 days ago. No response on the security audit?" Jack closed his eyes, forcing himself to breathe. But the mental image wouldn't go away. A trashed living room, Mr. Whiskers yowling from under a chair, the air thick with leftover food and spilled wine. He pushed the deadline back by a day, scrambling to fix what he could, but deep down, he knew. His reputation, something he had spent years carefully building, was cracking. Fast. When Jack returned from his workspace, his face drained and shoulders heavy, Marco was already waiting in the hallway, arms crossed, expression torn between anger and disappointment. "Jack, we're in a full-on crisis, and all you do is sit there coding. You said you'd help, but the only thing you've managed is keeping Sam out of the damn bathroom." Mia jumped in, voice sharp and rising. "All you care about is math. What's fair, what's not. I called for help, and all you could think about was your stupid cybersecurity deadline. You don't understand me at all." The words piled up, each one heavier than the last, all of them aimed squarely at Jack. And before he could even respond, Elena stepped into the room, eyes blazing. "Jack, is it me or your sister? You want to help someone? Fine, but don't make me sit here and listen to both sides tear each other apart." Her voice was ice. The weight of it all crashed over Jack like a wave. And for a long second, he couldn't speak, only stood there, crushed under the pressure of a family unraveling, a love slipping away, and a life he no longer recognized. The pressure came crashing from all sides like a storm. On one front, Sam and Mr. Whiskers reeling from the invasion. On another, a career teetering on collapse, and surrounding it all, his sister, her boyfriend, and his girlfriend, each with their own demands. In the middle of the wrecked living room, Jack stood trapped in the crossfire, struggling to breathe. The piece of his 600 square feet now felt like nothing more than a faint memory. And in that moment, he realized the escalation had gone far beyond anything he had prepared for, and the real test was only just beginning. Jack staggered into the living room, his head still spinning after a day packed with arguments and accusations. Mr. Whiskers let out a soft, miserable groan from the corner of the couch. Luna curled by the window, eyes tired and glassy, tracking his every step. All Jack wanted was a sliver of quiet before facing his sister again. He sat down at the edge of the table, opened his laptop, and typed in the password to Mia's inbox, the email she'd been using to handle Airbnb bookings and travel confirmations. His heart pounded when he saw them. A string of unread emails, all from Broker Pro Realty. Each one titled "Faxed Copy of Home Sale Agreement." He clicked on the attachment. It wasn't a notarized contract, just a flimsy fax, faded logo from a no-name brokerage, no clear address, no legal weight. At the bottom it read, "Pending transferor signature," with a crooked note scrawled across the page, "Temporary negotiation hold." There was no signature from Mia, no official seal, nothing binding. Everything about it screamed facade, a staged illusion, crafted to pass off as a home sale. Jack bit down on his lip, his face draining of color. His sister had never actually transferred ownership. She had faxed a fake, flashed it online, spun a story of freedom, just convincing enough for him to believe, and let his guard down. He pulled the faxed contract full screen, reading each line aloud. Party A agrees to sell the property. Party B confirms deposit. Payment to be made in full. Contract becomes effective upon Party A's signature. Every word felt like a blade, cutting into the trust he had placed in his sister. Jack shivered slightly, then shut the laptop with finality. It was late, but he knew this couldn't wait. Tomorrow morning, he would confront her. Just as the bedroom door clicked shut behind him, Mia appeared, eyes suspicious, breath shallow. She stood frozen in the hallway, her face pale under the dim yellow light. Jack didn't give her a chance to speak. He raised the printed fax in his hand and cut straight to the point. "You used my email to hide something. What are you covering up, Mia?" Mia flinched, eyes welling up, trying to steady her voice. "Jack, let me explain." But Jack slammed the fax down onto the table. "Explain what? That this home sale contract is a glorified fax scam? It's legally worthless. You didn't even sign your name once." Mia froze, her eyes darting away, voice trembling. "I needed to test you. I had to know how you'd react if my freedom was threatened." Jack's face flushed red, his chest rising sharply like it might burst. "Test me? By faking a scam? By scheming over property? You thought I'd just let you crash here and slowly hand over my home?" Mia looked down, tears sliding down her cheeks. "It all started in Nepal. I knew I'd failed. I made up the scam story to seem desperate, to make you feel sorry for me. I pretended to be broke so you'd open the door. What for? To draw you into my nomad life. to show you the fake contract, and then, her voice cracked, then I was going to back you into a corner. Either give me this apartment, or lose me and Luna forever. Her eyes shimmered with a wild mix of regret and ambition, a dangerous, desperate cocktail. And Jack stood frozen, stunned. His sister, his own sister, had scripted every plea, every cry, every moment of chaos just to take ownership of the home he'd spent a decade paying off. Jack stood in silence, eyes locked on Mia like they were staring straight through her, past the lies, past the performance, down to the truth she couldn't hide anymore. Without a word, he reopened her inbox, scrolled to the email from Broker Pro Realty, and read it aloud. Party A may withdraw the facts at any time if no deposit is made according to terms. Jack exhaled slowly, his voice cold, sharp. You see this? You didn't pay a deposit. You didn't sign. So how dare you pretend you owned anything? You used me, Mia. You used family like it was a prop in some professional-level con job. Suddenly, Luna let out 2 long, echoing howls, a sound that cut through the room like a warning bell. The husky tilted her head, her gaze piercing, almost as if she understood every dark truth that had just been dragged into the light. Jack lowered the facts and looked at his exhausted sister. Then he placed a hand on her trembling shoulder. You made a serious mistake. Family isn't a tool for chasing ambition. Mia collapsed under the weight of his words, sobbing, her voice barely a whisper. I just wanted a free life. Jack closed his eyes, a storm of humiliation and fury rising in his chest. The 600-square-foot apartment, once his quiet fortress, was no longer a refuge. It was a target, and his own sister had been circling it with every calculated move. He quietly pulled out his phone and dialed. I'd like to report a fraud involving property, he said, voice flat, almost numb. Luna howled once more, low, long, and certain, like the final stamp of truth in a courtroom. Maya lifted her face, eyes swimming in a blur between regret and resentment, wondering if her brother had any forgiveness left now that every scheme lay exposed in the harsh light. And as the shrill tone of the police dispatcher echoed from the speaker, Jack knew. He had just ended the game his sister started. He had drawn the line. And in doing so, he closed one of the darkest chapters in their family's story, where betrayal wore the mask of love and trust shattered into tragedy. The moment Jack hung up after calling the civil police, a dead stillness settled over the 600-square-foot apartment. He moved in silence, locking the window, the same one Mia had once climbed through to sneak into his life. Then he turned to the front door, checked the lock one last time. Every click of the deadbolt sounded like a verdict. She had crossed his final line, and he could not let her step another foot into his space. The warm yellow light from the living room cast a dull glow across the floor, where crumbs from torn bread, muddy paw prints from Luna, and shattered glass from the fundraiser still lingered like scars. Jack gently swept the bits of paper aside, opened his nightstand drawer, and switched on the desk lamp. He sat down, steady now, ready to face whatever questions the first civil officer might ask in the morning. Jack didn't sleep that night. He sat on the floor, back against the exposed wooden frame of the sofa, eyes fixed on his laptop screen. He reread the incident report over and over, carefully documenting each timestamp, from the desperate call from Nepal to the chaotic pop-up dinner. As if sealing every word like an official affidavit, every detail was handwritten in case legal proof was needed. Jack wanted no room for error, no chance of stumbling when the moment came. On the other side of the screen, the folder labeled Mia Inbox sat open, containing the fake property facts, the clearest proof that Mia had staged the entire scam. Jack felt a mix of tension and relief. Tension, knowing he would soon have to confront his sister in front of others. Relief, because finally, at least one piece of the truth had surfaced. When the screen finally went dark, Jack pressed his forehead against the edge of his notebook, then rolled into bed, drained. His phone sat on the nightstand, now set to block all messages from Mia and Marco. FaceTime calls? Disabled. The email threads titled, "Can we stay a few nights?" and Airbnb cost estimate had been moved into the blocked folder. His final effort to draw a clear, unforgiving line between brother and sister. Notifications poured in from Sam and Alina. Sam apologized for his outburst, asking for a chance to mend things. Alina sent a quiet message. "I know it's been hard. I'm here no matter what." But Jack felt it. Deep down, he couldn't let anyone in. Not yet. Not until the investigation was done. Not until the storm had fully passed. For now, distance was his only form of peace. The next morning, the officer arrived, briefcase in hand, eyes scanning the wrecked apartment. With clinical precision, Jack walked him through every detail: the torn-up living room, the email inbox, the fake faxed contract. He provided statements from Sam and Elena, each carefully documented. The officer scribbled notes rapidly, nodding occasionally. "Based on your report," he said, "there's enough to pursue a civil fraud case." Jack let out a long, shaky breath. At least now, the law was on his side. What came next would be a long process. Testimony, evidence, court appearances. It wouldn't be over in a day. But Jack knew this was the only path left, the final measure to end the dangerous game his sister had started. At that very moment, thousands of kilometers to the east, Mia stumbled out of LAX airport. She dragged an empty suitcase behind her, eyes puffy from exhaustion and worry. Since Nepal, Marco had vanished without a trace. Luna had been held by authorities over import paperwork issues, and eventually placed in the care of an animal rescue organization. Mia had tried calling Jack. Every attempt hit a busy tone. Emails went unanswered. The Venice Beach condo was long gone, its profits burned through in a whirlwind of fleeting luxuries across Asia. Her bank account now sat at just a few $100s. Standing outside the terminal in the hazy California heat, she whispered to herself, "Is brotherhood strong enough to pull me back from the edge I'm slipping off?" Back at the temporary rental in Los Angeles, Mia pushed open the door and stepped into the silence. The space was stripped to essentials: a fold-out bed, a small wardrobe, a few boxes of bedding stacked in corners. She stood quietly by the window, staring out, her mind drifting back to the days of tailored blazers and high-stakes contracts. Now there were no contracts, no savings. Everything had reset to zero. Emptiness. Mia picked up her phone, opened the blocked contacts folder, and hovered her thumb over Jack's name. She pressed and held, waiting, then let go. "I know you don't want to hear from me anymore," she whispered to no one but herself. After everything, Mia sank to the floor, arms wrapped around her knees, and whispered to herself, "Does my brother still have it in him to forgive me? Or has he already decided I'm beyond saving?" She pictured Jack, alone in his Seattle apartment, sitting in that narrow living room, his back against the sofa, bathed in warm yellow light, separated from the cold night outside. Mia had once believed family was the one unshakable foundation, but now it all felt shattered. And then came the final, unshakable question in her mind. If Jack could show up, slam the door, and leave me standing in the mud, then is he still the same big brother I once knew, warm, protective? Or just a stranger, quietly waiting for the moment I crossed the line, to disappear from my life for good? Night settled over Los Angeles, and the street lamp outside cast a pale yellow glow through the thin curtain. Mia stared up at the ceiling, her mind weighed down by the wreckage of her choices. The limitless adventure she once dreamed of had unraveled into a string of mistakes, leading her to a place with no clear way out. She made a quiet promise to herself. She would never trouble Jack again. Even though her heart still longed for an apology, a hug, a moment of warmth, Mia knew she had to rise on her own now. Because the final consequence wasn't just losing the apartment or her brother. It was learning, the hardest way possible, where freedom ends and where the fragile limits of family begin. Weeks after the storm had passed, Jack held firm to one truth. No matter how close the bond, even family must be accountable for their own choices. The boundary between kinship and personal freedom wasn't meant to build walls of indifference, but to protect the space each person needs to grow. Mia, having returned with nothing but regret, finally understood. Not everyone is obligated to clean up the mess left by reckless decisions. Sometimes the most valuable lessons come not from being rescued, but from learning how to stand alone when there's no one left to catch you. Their story leaves behind a quiet but powerful message. Family is a foundation, not an anchor that keeps you stuck at the bottom. Setting boundaries doesn't mean you're heartless. It means you respect both yourself and the people you love. Because when freedom becomes an excuse to ignore consequences, that same freedom can come back harder, more brutal than expected. So what do you think? If you were Jack, how would you protect your boundaries? And if you were Mia, would you have the courage to own your mistakes and rise without a safety net? Drop your thoughts in the comments. We want to hear your story. And don't forget to hit subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss the next episode of Family Drama, where every story is a raw, emotional ride packed with lessons and twists you didn't see coming.